Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metropolis Radio. Today we are talking about the fact that Roland Emmerich is saying that Marvel, DC, and Star Wars are ruining movies nowadays. But before we get into that, guys, just remember that at least one of my videos every week will be exclusive to my alt tech presences, and I am happily now on Rumble. So now there's 3 different platforms I'm on. It's not just going to be BitChute and Odyssey anymore. It's going to be BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. If you're watching this on YouTube, the links to all 3 of those sites will be down in the description below. So anyway, guys, let's get right into this. And it's titled here from Screen Rant, Marvel, DC, and Star Wars are ruining movies, says Roland Emmerich. Independent State Director Roland Emmerich says franchises such as the MCU, DCEU, and Star Wars ruin modern movies because they're unoriginal. Independent State Director Roland Emmerich has recently claimed that franchises such as the MCU, DCU, and Star Wars are ruining movies. Besides Independent State, Emmerich is also the mind behind several of the last 3 decades' defining disaster movies, including The Day After Tomorrow, 2012 and 2016 sequel to his smash hit film Independence Day Resurgence. Emmerich's newest film, Moonfall, will be released on February 3rd, 2022. So by the time you guys are probably seeing this, Moonfall would have already released. Emmerich is, of course, not the first big-name Hollywood director to take a dislike to many of the modern super franchises. While promoting his film The Irishman, famed director Martin Scorsese stated that MCU films weren't cinema. Scorsese suggested that the action-packed blockbusters were closer to theme park rides than anything else. There often seems to be a general feeling amongst Hollywood filmmakers that massive franchises suppress creativity. For example, last night Soho director Edgar Wright reportedly left the production of MCU's Ant-Man after the studio rewrote the script, leaving Wright's voice out entirely. And that is a whole other video for another time. But basically, to keep a long story short, Edgar Wright wanted to make an Ant-Man movie going all the way back as far as 2006. And rumor and innuendo is he was forced out of 2015's Ant-Man so that they can bring in Peyton Reed to do it because, from Kevin Feige's perspective, who's easier to control? The guy who directed Bring It On, that would be Peyton Reed, or the guy who directed Shaun of the Dead. I think I'm gonna leave that one up to you, but I think you know what answer I'm leaning toward. It seems that this lack of director creativity is a sentiment that Emmerich shares. In a recent interview with Den of Geek, Emmerich was asked if it was difficult to get an original action movie made in the age of the MCU and DCEU. Emmerich immediately answered yes, stating that Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over. And here is what Roland Emmerich said, quote, "Oh yes, because naturally Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over. It's ruining our industry a little bit because nobody does anything original anymore." Emmerich did not stop there, however. Emmerich continued to point out how studios like Marvel condition their audiences to favor their familiar stories and brand of storytelling by releasing up to 4 films a year and several series on Disney+. According to Emmerich, this makes it hard for any filmmaker with a new idea to get an audience's attention. Emmerich states that the only director who seems to get away with original ideas with ease is the Dark Knight director Christopher Nolan. And you know what else that Marvel is actually conditioning you for that he did not touch on? Marvel is conditioning you to accept mediocrity. If you're releasing 4 films a year and you're releasing 4 or 5 TV shows a year, you're inundated with so much MCU stuff that you're just going to accept anything that comes out just because it has the word Marvel on it. So, I get what he was going for with, Marvel conditioning their audiences to favor their familiar stories and brand of storytelling by releasing up to 4 films a year and several series on Disney+. But that, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. That's actually a video that I'm currently working on right now is about the MCU in general. So, no offense, guys, to any of you listening to this. I really don't want to go off on a tangent for 20 minutes when that video is already in the pipeline and there is a lot to be said. So I kind of don't want to go off the cuff for that. Anyway, getting back to it because I've tangented for far too long. While films such as those in the MCU certainly have struck a chord with fans and can boast a considerable following, it's easy to see where Emmerich is coming from. Emmerich is a filmmaker who not only directs but writes many of his films. While back in the 90s, Emmerich and his original disaster movies were a hot commodity, he is now faced with his newest film opening in the wake of Spider-Man No Way Home. while Moonfall is only one movie, No Way Home is the 27th movie in the MCU, and if its box office returns continue on their current trend, No Way Home will be the most successful movie ever. It is certainly understandable why Emmerich is apprehensive about his newest release. However, Emmerich still has many fans out there, and he might find that many of them are eagerly awaiting the chance to enjoy one of his patented thrill rides when Moonfall is released in theaters. Now, does Roland Emmerich actually have a point here? I would actually argue that he does. I mean, say what you want about Roland Emmerich in the disaster movies he made, but at the same time, you know, Universal Soldier and Stargate, while they were both in the same genre, they were both sci-fi movies. They're both completely different movies. That even goes for the differences between Stargate and Independence Day. Both alien sci-fi movies, but both very different movies entirely. You could even make the same argument about The Day After Tomorrow in 2012. Both, you know, big action disaster movies where cities get destroyed along with countries, but again, completely different movies despite being in the same genre. You watch any MCU movie nowadays, it's now a case of if you've seen one, you've seen them all. And Star Wars is starting to get, and even Star Wars is starting to get that way to a degree. I would argue not under the George Lucas era, but under the Disney era as well. And guys, that's pretty much all I got for you. You know, before I tangent off for way too long, if you stuck around this long, thanks so much for doing so. And if you've been following me long enough, you know I'm terrible at ending these videos, so I will just see you guys on next time.